This week on Worldview, Trump tariffies the world and terrifies markets. What does this mean for America's relations with the world? Amongst dozens of countries that have been slapped with tariffs, what are the diplomatic upsides and downsides of India's relative silence on the issue? Hello and welcome. I'm Suhasini Haidar, and this is Worldview at the Hindu. Now, US President Donald Trump's announcement of tariffs had been anticipated for weeks. He himself had been warning, calling it Liberation Day for the US economy.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple, can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence.
As he made that announcement, Trump held up tariff boards, went down the list of countries that would be slapped, first by a base 10% from April the 5th, and the highest reciprocal tariffs beginning April the 9th. Those included China at 34%, plus 20% from before, Vietnam 46%, the EU 20%, Japan, South Korea, all the way down to India, which is at 26 or 27%, depending on which chart you look at.
India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades.
But here's a real global map of those tariffs, giving you a look at the spread of it. But remember, those numbers don't actually represent reciprocal tariffs in terms of what are the tariffs put by those countries. After all, India's average tariff for MFN trade is about 17% only, but it's written up as 52%. It's really about the difference in trade levels decided by a very complicated equation that the US Trade Representative's Office put on its website. You can read about it over there, and please take a look at that Greek equation that has been put out to try and simplify matters, although I'm not sure it succeeds. You can find more details on the White House's website and at the Hindu's website at the links given below. Now, global markets reacted immediately to the announcements from Japan's Nikkei, India's Sensex, France's CAC 40, but none reacted more than US indices themselves. Remember, the Nasdaq was down, the Dow Jones was down, S&P 500 all closed about 5% or so down from the previous day.
On Wall Street, markets falling, tumbling.
Stocks plunging down, down, down.
The Nasdaq's getting crushed. Small caps are getting crushed.
This is a shock to the system.
It is ugly out there, worse than worst case scenario.
Stocks are getting slashed and burned. $2.5 trillion vaporized.
$2.5 trillion vaporized. Your kid's college fund disintegrated. Your 401k given the death penalty. Your pension waterboarded in Guantanamo. Those stocks your Nana gave you 20 years ago accidentally stepped on a landmine while vacationing in Vietnam. Economists say we could be on the verge of a recession, so things are looking scary right now.
When asked, Trump himself said that he wasn't worried about the market collapse.
It was a sick patient that went through an operation on Liberation Day, and it's going to be a booming country, a very booming country. It's going to be amazing.
But what about the diplomatic effect? The US's friends seem to be the most upset by the breadth and the level of the tariffs. They were unexpected. China slapped counter tariffs of 34% while barring 11 American companies from working there. The European Union says it is working on a package of countermeasures too. Even allies like Japan, South Korea, Germany, France, Australia said that they were really upset with the tariffs. Here's what Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said.
The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend. Today's decision will add to uncertainty in the global economy, and it will push up costs for American households.
Now, significantly, Russia, supposedly one of America's biggest rivals, wasn't on that list, although countries like Lesotho and Nauru were. So how did India react? You can take a look at the one statement that has been made so far. No comments have come yet from the Prime Minister or from any minister. The Commerce Ministry put out this statement saying, quote, it is carefully examining the implications of the various measures and announcements. It was even studying the opportunities that may arise, and that it would keep negotiating the bilateral trade agreement between the US and India that has been underway. Now, on a previous Worldview, we had talked about what India's choices were and said there were three: give it back or retaliate, give in, submit to them, or give up, simply wait it out. And it seems as if the Modi government has decided on somewhere between 2 and 3, give in and give up. So what exactly has India done so far in terms of messaging to the US? The first, it began those talks for a bilateral trade agreement to address most of the issues that Trump has spoken about, whether it's the tariffs, the trade imbalance, bilateral trade deficit, market access issues, and others. Second, India has reduced its tariffs already on a number of items, including US alcohol and motorcycles, guaranteed to please the US. Also, according to officials privy to the negotiations going on, the Indian side has indicated a willingness to reduce tariffs on more than half of all goods being imported so far into India. Fourth, India may also discuss if it can forego some of the extra surcharges, the digital tax it had put on, production-linked incentives, and other such things, as well as buy more American energy and defense. India is reportedly discussing or willing to discuss market access for agricultural goods and dairy products. Now, those had so far been considered no-go areas for India. Above all, it has said nothing critical of the Trump administration thus far. Remember, in contrast, when Trump withdrew India's GSP status in 2019, India's response had been sharp. It had slapped tariffs in return and demanded the restoration of that GSP status. So what are the diplomatic benefits of India's current approach? One, officials say by not commenting, continuing to negotiate, India is really first in the queue for a possible reversal or a reduction in US tariffs. And of course, Mr. Trump is known to change his mind. Second, that India has been slapped with high tariffs, but they aren't as high as some of the rival exporting nations, things like China, Vietnam, Thailand, or even closer home, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So actually, India may receive a comparative advantage. This does seem to be a bit of a stretch, but thus far, Indian markets have factored in the duties in areas like auto parts, and so perhaps the reaction of the Indian markets has not been as drastic, only about 0.5% compared to others. For the dismantling India's protectionist policies and high tariffs and non-tariff barriers is actually a good thing. And that is agreed to by most economists today. It is interesting that now the government is agreeing this will open up investment and would benefit the Indian economy. On the other hand, there is a diplomatic downside to India's relative silence. The first, that India's lack of protest could mean that the US just won't take its concerns as seriously compared to other countries that have protested very loudly. Secondly, that India will be under greater pressure to bend to the US's demands on that tight timeline, as the BTA's first tranche agreement is expected by the fall of this year, between September to November, so time pressure as well. Third, if India gives in on agricultural and dairy trade, this could set off problems within the country. Remember, more than 54% of the population subsists on agriculture, dairy, and allied sectors. Fourthly, remember, every other country that is negotiating FTAs with India at present of some sort, the EU, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, all will expect similar concessions to what India has given the US. Now, unlike India's stand on Russia sanctions, refusing to back down, and that really brought solidarity from the global South countries as well as other countries, this position of India's could actually weaken the support for India, particularly amongst the global South nations that have been badly affected. India also forgoes the chance to unify the region, as other SAARC countries and ASEAN countries are all badly hit. The Prime Minister's visit to Thailand for the BIMSTEC summit, for example, where he met with leaders of Bangladesh, Nepal, Thailand, etc., would have been the ideal opportunity in that sense. There's also, of course, the big question. If Trump could tariff FTA partners like Australia, then what is the credibility of the BTA that is being negotiated right now? Could Trump add tariffs at a later date anyway?
We continue to have discussions with the counterparts in the US administration. And plus, we're also trying to first use all available data to try and analyze the implications for our industry and to address concerns in our own country first before we take it up with any multilateral forum.
So what's Worldview's take? India's silence in the face of what could be global economic chaos runs counter to its claims for global leadership and stability. In the short run, acquiescence to Trump's unilateral, disruptive, and even destructive actions may buy the government some peace. But in the long term, it will be seen as diplomatic submission that only emboldens more such actions, and not just from the United States. Let's get you some reading recommendations, and a few are actually available online. You should be abreast of all that Trump plans. There's something called Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, that came out before Trump came to power. It is chapters on free trade and fair trade by Peter Navarro and Kent Lasman, but it also tells you about what to expect in the first 180 days of the Trump administration. The second is that report that just came out, the 2025 National Trade Estimate Report on foreign trade barriers, released by the USTR this week, and it has a particular chapter on India you should read. There's something called Clashing Over Commerce, a history of US trade policy by Douglas A. Irwin. Looks back particularly what the 1930s tariffs, what we call the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, did for the US economy. Then there's India's Trade Policy by Arvind Panagria, and India's Moment, Changing Power Equations Around the World by Mohan Kumar, and I think I've spoken a bit about these in the past. And there's a new book out called An Economist in the Real World, The Art of Policy Making in India by former advisor Kaushik Basu. So do read all of these and write into us about Worldview from the team here. Thanks for watching.